There are growing concerns about forced labour in China being used to produce seafood that is enjoyed by consumers in Europe and the US. North Koreans and Uyghurs, a minority group from the West Chinese province of Xinjiang, are reportedly being forced to work in processing plants producing fish sticks, calamari and other seafood products that are then exported to the West. An influential congressional committee with bipartisan membership held a hearing on the issue this week in Washington, DC. Ian Urbina is the director and founder of the Outlaw Ocean Project, a non-profit journalism organisation that investigates human rights abuses and environmental issues on the seas. He was among the expert witnesses giving evidence to lawmakers, and I began by asking him why seafood wasn't covered by a US law banning Uyghur-made products back in 2021.
All right. So in the last 3 years, there's been over $1 million of products stopped at the U.S. port because of this law. Mostly those have been cotton and garment, tomato and solar panels. Those are the big industries that have gotten a lot of attention thus far. Seafood, largely based along the coast in the east of the country, thousands of miles away from landlocked western Xinjiang province, is an industry that most folks assumed would not be touched by Uyghur workers because it's so far away. But what happened was after COVID, everything locked down, including in China, a lot of industries, in seafood included, had major labor shortages and problems. And so the government began transferring to help out the industry, transferring over 1,000 workers from Xinjiang, 2,000 miles across the country, to Shandong to work in these plants. And indeed, we've got hundreds of companies in the US and Europe that have been inadvertently receiving products from these plants that had Uyghur workers in them.
And how have those companies responded to the evidence you've put forward, and how has the Chinese government responded to these allegations?
So, we've been talking with companies for over a year now and laying out our findings and describing our methodology. Mostly, and on our website, we have every exchange we had with every company, and it's over 300. Most companies decided to stay behind a wall of silence and just refused to engage. Some few companies engaged pretty openly, didn't always agree or like what we were telling us, but were very engaged. And since we've published, about a half dozen major companies have severed their ties with specific factories that we identified. The industry behind closed doors is scrambling. There's a lot of discussion happening about how they're going to deal with this issue. The Chinese government has responded essentially by saying the material is fabricated, to use their word, that none of these people are unhappy or are part of forced labor, and it's all legal. And truth be told, not the fabricated part, but the rest of what they're saying isn't untrue. Under Chinese law, using Uyghur workers and transferring them across the country is not illegal. But again, that misses the point, and intentionally so, I'd say. The law that's being broken is the law in the U.S., and increasingly Europe is moving in the direction of similarly viewing these workers as forbidden, much like North Korean workers, which is another set of workers that we identified in the same supply chain.
And I just want to end on, I guess, the workers themselves. What kind of lives are they leading if they are indeed forced to take on these jobs thousands of miles from their home province in the west of China? I mean, you talk about in your report some coded social media messages of Xinjiang workers posting smiling pictures of themselves, but accompanying it with mournful Uyghur songs.
Yeah, I mean, as you well know, the censors within China that police the internet there are very effective and aggressive, and it's not an option for Xinjiang workers to voice their complaints openly. So they do use coded methods to convey what's happening to them. And so we mined the Chinese equivalent of TikTok, Douyin videos, thousands of hours of it. These were selfies, posted by average people in China, often in the factories themselves. Some of the most compelling evidence was in the factories where they posted videos of themselves working and sort of in coded language complaining about their situation. So that's how you can get a sense of the sentiment of their experience. We also had stories of, while the Chinese government is no longer to the extent, 3 years ago, putting people in detention centers and re-education camps, they are forcefully transferring people. And we had stories of workers who said that if they even hinted that they did not want this job that was quote unquote being offered to them, then there were repercussions for their families in terms of being incarcerated.
Ian Urbina, the director and founder of the Outlaw Ocean Project, speaking to me from Washington, DC. And that just about brings us to an end of this edition of World Business Report. I'll be back at midnight GMT with Business Matters. We'll be discussing the election of the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, and what that might mean for US aid funding both to Ukraine and Israel. As ever, I'll be joined by guests in opposite corners of the world. Tonight, they'll be from the US and India. In the meantime, you can find more business news on our website at bbc.com/news/business. And I'm on X, formerly Twitter, @Viv Nunes. Do let us know what you think of the program. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.